Imagine the descent into a dark, misty place far from the throbbing world of the living. The Greek underworld is a place of shadows, eternal twilight, and endless mystery. To enter, one has to cross over rivers of death, pass through gates guarded by fantastic beasts, and cross over with a god who rules with somber authority. Feared and respected, to ancient Greece, it was known as the domain of Hades, not a place of punishment in fire and smoke, but a shadowy reflection of the mortal world where souls ultimately rest. The journey into this plane is rife with encounters that test your resolve and show how grand really was ancient belief in life after death. Let us journey in a curves and bends through the darkest regions of Greek mythology into that place where life and death would become two sides of the same coin across the waters of death. Your journey begins where the River Styx had formed the ancient demarcation between the world of the living and the kingdom of the dead. This holy, black river has long been positioned in Greek myth as the definitive marker of life's end. The Styx is not a common body of water. Its very presence is said to be infused with the power of the gods. It was actually so sacred that the gods themselves swore their most unbreakable oaths upon it. The word Styx means hate or abhorrence. It's the river of separation between the living world and the eternal rest of the dead. The Antient ferryman of the passage over Styx is Charon, in Latin written sometimes Chiron, an Antient clothed with an old cloak, his hands holding the oars of his boat. Amongst the most well-known and ancient images of Greek mythology is Charon, whose work is endless. It has been his weary task day and night for ages, and must be so until the end of time. So kings and beggars, poets and warriors, all mortals, have descended to his presence, equal in death. According to other traditions, his boat crosses not only the River Styx, but also the Acheron, another river of the underworld, which means pain and sorrow. To cross over, the dead needed to pay a fee to Charon, usually an obol, which was placed under the tongue upon burial. Without this fee, a soul would be doomed to wander the shores of the river, lost and forgotten, unable to journey to the afterlife. The placing of coins with the dead is one of the most ancient known death rituals in ancient Greece, which still survives in one form or another into modern times. You ride across the silent Styx in Charon's boat. His dark and still waters reflect nothing, because within their depths is carried the death of everything. There is an eerie calmness, as though you have left behind all of the troubles of life. The landscape blurs, and then out in the distance, the far shores of the underworld come into focus. Your journey has just begun, guardian of the gates. When the boat of Charon finally reaches the other side, you step onto the cold, stony ground. Before you stand the gates of the underworld, ancient structures of iron, dark, towering impossibly high. There stands Cerberus, a three-headed guardian hound that watches over the entrance to the realm of Hades. The offspring of Echidna, mother of monsters, and Typhon, a monstrous serpentine giant, was something to be both marveled at and terrified of. He's not a beast as much as a living boundary between worlds. Each head of Cerberus presents a fearsome and intimidating figure on its own account, yet altogether they function almost as an impassable force. His mission is unique, not to let the dead escape from the underworld and not to allow any living in. Linking Cerberus with the underworld is not only physical, but also spiritual, since he personifies life and death, under the law that no person should disrupt the balance. The sharpness of his teeth, the shine of his eyes, remind one of those primal forces that rule the underworld. In turn, the character of Cerberus reflects a lot about the Greeks' view on death. Both a fearsome monster, and at the same time a necessary monster, he was the very last threshold between the world of the living and the certainty of death. Passing through those gates means certifying that one is no longer among the living. Yet in spite of this fearsome reputation, even Cerberus was outdone. Most famously, of course, Heracles subdued him during one of his labors, dragging him into the world of the living as proof of his triumph. In this instant, we see how tenuous is the boundary between life and death, a boundary that, in circumstances equally extraordinary, may be traversed, though only at great cost. With every step that brought you nearer, your pulse quickens with the brute. Growls he does. But here in this spot, an understanding is reached silently. You are to be passed through, not to escape. Slowly, Cerberus gives way, and you pass under the iron gates into the deepest of Hades' realm, Lord of the Underworld. As you step out of the area, leaving Cerberus behind, You are now out into the great dark openness of the underworld. The air is thick and heavy here with the whispers of souls and the weight of eternal rest. Before you stretches the dark plain, misty forests, and further on mountains, all shrouded in eternal twilight. At the heart of it all, the palace of Hades. Hades was a feared and respected underworld ruler. The meaning of his name is the unseen, and he is among the three brothers who, after the overthrow of the Titans, divided the cosmos amongst themselves. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades took the underworld. Unlike his brothers, he did not seek glory or admiration. With a stoic resolve, he took up his role as Lord of the Dead. The palace of Hades was much like its ruler, dark, imposing, and full of quiet, unopposed power. The fortress-like structure seemed to be carved from the very substance of the underworld, its black stone walls absorbing what little light dared to enter. It was here that spirits of the dead would be judged and sentenced into their eternal fates. Hades himself was not there to punish, but to sustain order. His throne is a place of balance where the souls of the dead have their final rest. It is not that Hades himself is this terrifying figure that many envision. He is regal and composed, with calmness of manner and steady bearing. He is at times depicted along with his wife Persephone, whom he abducted from the living world into being his queen. The myth of Persephone speaks to her dual nature, connected with life and death, partly every year spent in the underworld with Hades, and partly with the world of the living. This means seasonal change in life-death cycles. Standing before Hades, you feel the weight of his enormous responsibility. He is not a cruel god or an evil one. Rather, he is a god of balance. His place is one of balance in nature, not one of punishment. The burden of eternity seems to fall upon your shoulders as you sense his presence. Ivor, fields of Asphodel, land of souls. Beyond the palace of Hades lies the fields of Asphodel, a place where ordinary souls find rest. In contrast to the Elysian fields reserved for heroes and those who have lived virtuous lives, or Tartarus, which holds evil under punishment, the fields of Asphodel constitute a neutral zone. It is here, in this marshy meadow, that the souls of those living neither extremely good nor extremely evil lives wander along in their eternal state of twilight. The flower asphodel gives its name to the fields, and the ancient Greeks did believe it associated with death and mourning. It is here, in these fields, that the dead wander along, shadow-like, with recollections of life slowly dulling, yet, without punishments, they are equally not capable of joy, but just continued in unbroken, silent repose. Walking through the asphodel meadows, one develops an appreciation for the subtlety in the Greek concept of the afterlife, which is not some monolithic reward and punishment solution, but rather an intricate way in which each soul found its place according to the life it had lived. The underworld wasn't some uniform concept. Rather, it was a sphere with attached layers and regions reminiscent of the moral and ethical ways of the Greeks. V. Tartarus, the pit of punishment. Tartarus represents a complete degree of punishment due to a violation of natural order in the universe. This is the place where cosmic justice gets articulated and where the gods have balanced good and evil. The existence of Tartarus speaks to the Greek view of divine retribution and moral order. In the ancient Greeks, this belief was deeply inculcated that the gods shaped not only the mortal life, but also a justice which universally extended beyond life and death. In this huge, feared chasm are summarily condemned the souls guilty of the most horrible transgressions, both of mortal and divine, to an eternal punishment. These transgressions often included offenses against the gods themselves, breaches of sacred oaths, or attempts at causing a disorder in nature, such as life and death. It is permanent. What makes Tartarus so dreaded is its permanence. In Tartarus, unlike in the Elysian fields or asphodel meadows, where souls may find their rest or wander aimlessly, torment is never-ending. No reprieve, no escape, no second chance, just suffering, contrived by the gods with the nicest precision to match the punishment to the crime in a horrible exactitude. The myth of Tartarus does not function only as some kind of effective deterrence against those individuals who would challenge the divine authority, but also as a reinforcement of the importance of balance in the cosmos. In Greek theology, Tartarus is not in itself evil. It is necessary. Just as Hades oversees the orderly treatment of the dead, so does Tartarus ensure that those guilty of unpardonable crimes meet their due. In this place, morality and punishment meet on a cosmic scale. Perhaps the most famous of those in Tartarus, Sisyphus was the crafty king who once and even a second time tricked the gods and successfully evaded death and returned to the mortal world against the will of the gods. For this hubris, he was condemned to rolling a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down each time he was near the summit, a punishment which symbolizes the futility of trying to escape one's fate. The equally notorious soul is that of Tantalus, who, for the heinous acts of serving his own son to the gods as a meal, was condemned to eternal thirst and hunger. He stands in a pool of water that recedes whenever he bends to drink, and with fruit-laden branches that withdraw whenever he reaches for them. We also find in Tartarus the Titans, among those primordial gods who, by Zeus and the other Olympians in the Titanomachy, were thrown. The confinements in Tartarus in this respect signify the final triumph of the Olympian gods and the establishment of a new order where even the most mighty of all cannot escape the universal order. This prison of the Titans serves as a reminder for both mortals and gods alike that, while balance is to be had in all things, power not tempered by control leads only to destruction and ruin. But beyond a place of punishment, Tartarus is a boundary, a line between chaos and order, a threshold that should never be crossed lightly. To the Greeks, this was no mythic place but part of the requirement in the structure of being. It holds in check the dark side of the world, holds it tight, which is the major restraint of primordial forces that would, if untrammeled, undo reality, the influence of the underworld on modern culture. Myths about the Greek underworld have left their inerasable mark upon modern culture, from literature and film to psychology and philosophy. So replete were these tales with symbolism and drama that they easily transcended the bounds of their ancient origins to form part of the collective unconscious of Western civilization. In literature, we find the echoes of the underworld myths in works as diverse as Dante's Divine Comedy, wherein Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso are heavily laden with borrowings from ancient conceptions of the afterlife, most especially the concept of moral retribution and cosmic justice. Dante's 9 circles of hell strikingly resemble the compartmentalized nature of Hades' realm, wherein different regions of the kingdom are devoted to different kinds of souls according to their merits or misdeeds in life. Of course, Greek mythology gets referenced in modern film and television too, especially when it comes to the underworld and the afterlife. Movies like Clash of the Titans and Disney's Hercules showcase Hades, Charon, and the underworld, all a little very stylized and often adapted for the sake of entertainment, drawing off of the ancient tales nonetheless. Especially Hades, who has been often made into a villain, though he really played a much more grey role in the actual myths. This reflects the more general cultural tendency to equate the underworld with evil, a concept much more in keeping with the Christian interpretations of hell than with the Greek view on the afterlife. In psychology, the underworld journey could also refer to the belief that the proper action of consciousness involves an exploration of the unconscious mind. This act of going down into Hades' underworld is an act that demonstrates the psychic process of the soul, whereby he has to face hidden fears, desires, and unresolved traumas. For instance, the psychologist Carl Jung would look upon the underworld as a graphic representation of the unconscious, with aspects of repressed emotions and parts of the self that one has forgotten. The inner trip or quest for self-knowledge and integration is enacted in the myths of Orpheus, Psyche, and other adventurers to the underworld. This condition of life, death, and whatever might be next finds expression even in modern philosophy through ancient myth. Existentialists like Albert Camus have used the myth of Sisyphus as a symbol of the human condition, where the eternal struggle represents the absurdity of life and man's search for meaning in an indifferent universe. The allure of the underworld across time. The underworld of the Greeks was an interesting place that held complex geography, terrifying guardians, and moral overtones all put together, where life and death, justice and punishment, power and balance contrast us strikingly. It is Charon, Cerberus, and Hades that speak to universal, very human-level concerns, the fear of death, the righting of wrongs, or whatever happens on the other side. In these myths, we find reflections of our own world, our struggles with mortality, and our own attempts to make sense of the universe's moral order. The Underworld is not only a place of punishment, but one that mirrors life itself. A place of consequences for actions done in life. A place where every soul will be brought accountable, and a place where the balance in the cosmos is ensured. For the Underworld is all about mystery, its darkness, and the inalienable connection to the world of the living. A place of endings and new beginnings where even death cannot stop the journey of a soul. And as much as the Underworld can be considered a realm of shadows, it is also a realm of truths, those truths that are still echoing within us today, just as they were in the time of the ancient Greeks. Thank you for spending time with us through Spookscope today. Feel free to share your knowledge and wisdom in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, my dear spooker, stay curious.